Hi, I'm Tom Wishon, and thanks very much for your interest in the Your Fit connector program. You know, in the fitting of golf clubs, it's always helpful. Let's consider it a must. The most all golfers want to try before they buy. So it's important to have a way to be able to have golfers hit test clubs made to the various specifications that you ordained from your club fitting analysis to have them try before they buy. It's also good for you as the club fitter because you're going to be able to see the ball flight, you're going to see how the golfer hits the clubs so that then you know that you need to tweak the clubs one way or another so that the fit is even better. So connector systems are very valuable in club fitting. There are other connector systems out there. There's no question about that. The thing about the Your Fit connector system that we like the most is the fact that it will allow the shaft to go through its full penetration all the way down to the bottom of the bore in an instant in-out changing of shafts with club heads to create fitting test clubs. Now let me give you a little bit of background because I know some of you may have a little bit of experience with the connectors before. Many of you remember that we used to call the connectors spiral lock fitting system or spiral lock connectors, okay? And that's because a number of years ago the Spiral Lock Corporation from Detroit, Michigan contacted us when they had begun to develop a connector system. And they came to me, we looked at it. You know, I thought that it held a great deal of potential because at the time there never was a connector that would allow you to insert the shaft all the way to the bottom of the bore to duplicate the same shaft flex, stiffness, bend profile that you would get if you epoxy the shaft in place into the club head with this. So we went to work with them, but from day one, Spiral Lock Corporation controlled everything. We were simply the distributors. And as we got further into the program, we found that there were little changes that needed to be made, and it was very difficult to get these done. And I know that some club makers who had the early versions of the Spiral Lock connectors, you had some problems with it. You broke some tangs off in putting them into the club heads. Sometimes you just had problems where the shaft wouldn't stay, tight enough to hit shots in the club. We know this. We fought it with Spiral Lock for a long time, and it was a difficult relationship, to say the least. Last year, though, Spiral Lock decided to wash their hands of the program, and so we took it over completely. And so beginning last year, we control everything with the connectors. Of course, we renamed them because Spiral Lock is no longer involved in the project, and they are now the Your Fit club fitting connectors. But the important thing is that we changed the production of the connectors, we changed the CNC machine shop that manufactures them, and we're now able to make them to extremely tight tolerances with far better consistency and quality than when we were working with Spiral Lock as the supplier for the connectors. The other change we made was that now both the 335 wood connector and the 370 iron connector are both CNC machined from 6.4 titanium. Okay, previously the iron connector had been made from aluminum, and it was easy to wear it out, snap tangs. It wasn't what it should have been. So both connectors are now machined from 6.4 titanium. Both of them are now being made to a tolerance of less than 1/1000th of an inch with the new machine shop that we chose to produce these. So it's with a little bit of a renewed energy or effort that we want to let you know about the connector system, and what I want to do today is show you a little bit about how it works so you can get over the learning curve with it. Plain and simple, what makes this work is the tremendous invention from Spiral Lock Corporation called the ramp thread design. As you're well aware with screw threads, the most common fine thread is a V-shaped thread. The Spiral Lock threading, though, has a ramp cut into the V, or set in the V, so that as you tighten against the ramp thread, you get more compression force. That's the beauty of the system, to be able to hold the shafts in place for hitting shots with that. So that means that we require the ramp threading to be cut in the hosel of the club heads. So we do stock all of our models here, every single one of the Wishon Golf wood, fairway wood, driver, hybrid, irons, even wedges, that we keep, all of them in a threaded form so that we can ship same day in most cases for this. We will also accept your other club heads. If you want to send other club heads in, we'll have them threaded for a fee. Takes a couple weeks, to get it through the machining process to do that, but we are happy to do that for you. So in getting set up with a UrFit connector system, you'll need to choose what heads you want to present to the golfers, and you'll get those from us in threaded, with the hosels threaded with the ramp thread in place. And then of course you'll have to choose what shafts you want to interchange, and that can be any shaft you want. The key point in working with the UrFit connectors is the prepping of the shaft to make it fit properly inside the connector. And this is the whole ball game when it comes to how well these things can work. Okay, what you want when you have the shaft prepped for use with the connector is that when you slide the bare connector on to the shaft tip, you want to have a definite feeling of rubbing between the outside of the shaft and the inside of the connector. If you have no rubbing feeling between the shaft tip and the connector, then the shaft is likely going to be a little bit too small, and there's a chance that the shaft may slip and turn after hitting a few shots. So that's the key part in getting the shafts prepped and set up correctly, both for the wood and for the iron connectors. Now, how you do this is a simple procedure. Okay, but first let me just tell you that occasionally, because there are a lot of plus or minus tolerances in shaft tips, you're going to find some shafts that come into you which already fit onto the connector. Now again, you can hear there's some rubbing here. So this is a shaft that basically right now is just fine as far as the fit. However, it has a really shiny urethane coating over it. So all we're going to do, if you have shafts which already, when they come to you, fit the connector, all you need to do is just take a little bit of hand sandpaper and just rough the surface, scratching the entire surface of the shaft all the way around. You're not really taking much in the way of any diameter down. You're scratching the urethane surface so that now you have a little bit more of a rough surface, so when the ramp threads compress the UrFit connector down, it can hold onto the shaft a little bit better. More likely though, you're going to run into shafts which, because of their paint that's applied onto the shaft, or because of just plus-minus tolerances from the shaft manufacturer, or by intent too, there are some companies that make a little bit larger, you'll find that the connector doesn't go on. Okay, so this is a shaft then that you need to prep from scratch for it. And I'll show you how we do it here at Wishon Golf. First thing is, we want to make sure that we don't prep the shaft any higher than the length of the connector and the shaft down into the head. So we'll take the shaft, first off, we'll insert it all the way to the bottom of the bore in the club head, and then you can lay the connector right up next to the shaft, and this shows you where the top of the connector is going to be. You can take a Sharpie pen and you can just make a little mark on the shaft, and that now tells you the amount of the tip that we're going to need to be prepping to fit the connector. Now, how you prep this is the same way that you prep shafts when you build golf clubs. Whatever, if you have a 1x42 sander, 1x30 belt sander, your choice of what belts you use, whether you use Trizac type belts on your graphite shafts or whether you're confident with the touch with a normal grit type of belt. Doesn't matter. But at this point, the procedure is to go to the machine and just prep a little, check the fit, prep a little, check the fit until you achieve that rubbing feel between the tip of the shaft and the inside of the connector. Okay, and so I've done that prepping, and you saw I've checked in between, and now I have the rubbing feeling between the shaft and the connector. That's what I'm looking for, for that. Now, when you're working with these to install the shaft into the head, you'll take the connector, and the long end of the connector, as you can see on the two ends, there's a short end and a long end. The long end of the connector is then screwed down into the hosel. Okay, so you'll screw it down into the hosel until it stops about 1/4 of an inch from the center shoulder piece touching the top of the hosel. Okay, you'll take the cap, you'll slide it over the top. That's got to go on. And now you'll insert the shaft down the connector all the way until you feel it hit the bottom of the bore. Okay, at this point then, you're going to start using the wrench to tighten the lower half of the connector into the hosel. Okay, the wood connectors require a 12 millimeter open-ended wrench. The iron connector, a 1/2 inch wrench. We also have these little handy tiny 4-inch adjustable wrenches that you could use one for both that are very handy, and we do keep these in stock. So what I find is the easiest is you'll find that you'll take the wrench and you will screw this down into the head. And as you dial down with a wrench and you get to a point where the shoulder of the center part of the connector touches the top of the hosel, now with the wrench, very firm, okay? You don't have to worry because you're not going to break anything here. Once you get the shoulder point in, now bring the cap down and you can begin to hand screw it down until it reaches a point where you'll need to use the wrench to finish the job. And once again, as you get the cap butted against the top, go ahead with firm, very firm pressure. Okay, now one of the things that you need to understand is that if you grab one end with the head with one hand, the grip with the other hand, and you twist as hard as you can twist, you might actually shift the shaft. But the reason is because your torquing force with a grip and a head with your hands is actually greater than what the torquing force is of hitting a shot. So if you want to check the fit for security, just use medium force between holding the head and trying to twist it with medium force. If you feel no movement, you're good. Okay, one of the things that we always suggest too, so you can tell if the connector would happen to slip during use, take a little Sharpie pen, put a mark on the top cap of the connector, put a mark right next to that on the shaft. And after every 2 or 3 hits by the golfer, you can just kind of take a look, and as long as the ink lines are lined up against each other, you know the shaft is staying perfectly secure in the head. Okay, so then when you get to the point where the golfers hit the shots, you want to change heads, you want to change shafts with this, the reverse method, just go ahead and start at the top, remove the cap, and then down at the bottom, put the wrench on the shoulder points, and then start turning. And this is my method where I just keep the grip on the ground and just spin in this manner until we get the connector where we're ready to get it off of the shaft. Now, if you're changing and you're using the same head, of course, you can leave this screwed in and you can just pull the shaft out as you want, leaving the part of the connector in the head if you desire. Method of installation for these is the same for the wood and the iron. The fit of the connector for the iron on the iron shaft, you still want to feel that definite rubbing between the inside of the connector and the tip of the shaft. Same method for installation. Now, because of the machining that's involved to very precisely cut the threads, You will still find, even though the machine shop does its best to try and wash the hosel, they can't do as full of a wash because the solutions could damage the finish on the heads that they're threading. So you may find over time that you'll pick up a little bit of machining oil, okay? A little bit of acetone to wash that off every so often. And in the threads, Q-tip, you just put it in and just run it around in a circle to clean the threads. And again, using acetone, this is going to evaporate extremely fast, okay? The other part of cleaning would be occasionally to clean the tip ends, because you could get some little machining oil residue that gets inside the connector. Same thing with a little bit of a wash with the acetone over the tip of the shaft with that. And that's pretty much it. Again, please remember, the key is prepping the tip of the shaft so you get the proper fit. If you're just starting into considering the YourFit connector program, ask us to prep a shaft, okay? We'll prep all shafts if you want to buy our shafts for use in your fitting with the YourFit connectors, and we'll be more than happy to prep all the shafts for the threaded heads and the connectors, and we'll do it all for you for no extra charge. We won't charge you for that. If you want to prep them yourself, but you want a little bit of help in knowing exactly what we mean when we say the rubbing feeling between the connector and the tip of the shaft, ask us. We'll take an old shaft around here, we'll prep the shaft tip, we'll whack the tip off of it, send it to you so you have something then to check with, and you'll know exactly what we mean when we say prep it only until you have this rubbing feeling between the inside of the connector and the shaft tip itself. And that's it. It is good. There are many guys out there who have been using this since day one without any kinds of problems because they understand the mechanism used and they prep the shafts correctly. We're here to offer any kind of help, and thank you very much for your attention.